Hi students, today's recipe is tomato and onion savoury tart. Now this is a step moving forward from your tomato and coriander salsa, so it's still using much the same ingredients but just using them a little bit different, and obviously using pastry instead of tortilla chips. So I've already taught you how to cut an onion, how to dice an onion, okay? Much the same slicing. You take off the skin, you cut the onion in half, and then you slice it having the root side facing your non-dominant hand, and slice down as thinly as you possibly can. Now, if you're not sure how to do that, you can watch any YouTube video on how to slice an onion. I'm sure they'll show you. If not, refer to my video from the tomato and coriander salsa. Instead of slicing it all the way down that way, you slice it that way. Okay, hope that helps. This is what you're going to end up with. Sliced onion that looks like this. Now I've used a bit the Spanish onion just to use up the ingredients from before. I didn't want to waste those ingredients, and I've added another onion to that. So the recipe says 2 onions and 2 tablespoons of oil. Now you need to put your stove on. And then you need to measure your 2 tablespoons of oil over the pan so you don't spill any. It's 1, 2. Okay, now just let that heat up, and then you add your onions. Now the recipe says the onions take about 20 minutes. They may or may not take that length of time. Just make sure you keep an eye on that. Okay, so I've got my onions here. I've already halved my tomatoes, ready for the next part of the recipe, and I've already cut the garlic. The garlic gets added to the onions 5 minutes before the onions are cooked. So as soon as you start to see some of the onions browning a little bit, add in your garlic. I don't know what that's doing, that's from earlier on. Okay, now the pastry. The recipe actually says to 1 sheet of ready-made puff pastry, and then it actually asks you to roll it out on a floured bench. Please don't do that if you're using the puff pastry when it comes like this. Okay, if you're getting ready-made puff pastry and it's frozen and it's in one long cylindrical tube and you have to cut it off, then you will have to roll it out to 1 centimetre thick. This pastry is already rolled out for you, so there's no need to do that. I've also got, again, my baking tray with the paper placed on the baking tray. Remember to wet your baking tray, add the paper, and then I've just put some oil on there so that it doesn't stick. So you want to take your pastry, and hopefully by now you've got your oven on, because if you're following the recipe, the oven has to be preheated to 200 degrees. Then you want to take your pastry and just cut it in half lengthwise, and then again turn it around so you end up with 4 sheets of pastry. I'm just going to make sure I've cut through that properly and through that side. Okay, so taking 1 sheet, pop it onto your tray, and then using a fork, oops, better get over here and put my onions in. There should be that nice sizzle sound when you pop the onions into your pan. Not sure you can see that from over there. It'd be lovely to have a cameraman to help me do this. Somebody who can show the really important aspects of the actual cooking process. But just so as you can see, I've got my onion in there, and just moving it around a little bit, and I've got that right up high, so I'm going to just turn it down a little bit while I work over here. Getting back to the pastry, using your fork, just put it against just the edges of the pastry. Oh, don't break it like I've just done there. And just to put a nice fancy design along the edge of the pastry there. That looks really good. And then keep on doing that with your 4 pieces of pastry. I'm going to pause this video and cook the onions. Make sure you get rid of the blue paper. I'll cook the onions, add the garlic, and when they're done, I will come back. Once you've done your pastry, round each edge like that, pop it into the oven for about 5 minutes, just until it starts to lift around the edges. And then we add the rest of the ingredients, the onion, the tomato, the garlic in the middle, and then it goes back into the oven. So in between each process, I'm going to just pause and get back to you. Okay, my pastry has had just 5 minutes in the oven. Make sure when you take it out the oven, you're using an oven glove, and make sure you're putting it on a surface that's not going to burn. Okay, if you put that straight on the kitchen bench, it will burn. At school, we've got stainless steel surfaces, so be very careful at home. Don't want your parents complaining that you've burnt their kitchen bench. Now the onion and garlic I've already completed. It should look like this when it's done. Now you can see the steam still coming off that, and it looks really quite brown. Now just as an aside, guys, that did take a lot less time than 20 minutes, so be very careful. Probably took me 10. You do want to get some of the really small pieces looking like they're maybe just slightly burnt. They're not burnt, they're actually what's called caramelized, and that's what gives the tart a really nice sweet flavour. So I'm just checking every time I complete something. I check my recipe just to make sure that I'm doing everything correctly. So the onion mixture is the first thing that goes over our slightly cooked pastry tarts. So just pop that in the middle and then start to spread it out. So you're dividing your onion mixture evenly between the 4 tart bases. Okay. The neater you are with doing this, the nicer your tarts will turn out. Okay, so I'm just making sure I've got an even amount on each one. I don't want to miss any of my ingredients, so I'm just going to use my brush there to make sure I get it all. Now, easiest way to clean the pan, straight into our dishwater. Okay, so by this time, it's probably cool enough to do it with your fingers, but you can actually just use a utensil to take the onions just up to where the start of your design is that you've done on the edge of your pastry. Try not to get it over the edge like I've just done a little bit there. Okay, and that should be enough. And then after the onions, again, I'm checking my recipe. It says top with a half tomato and sprinkle over salt and pepper. So I've already divided my tomatoes, and I'm just going to put mine upside down on 2 and the right way up on 2, just for variety, and see what I prefer. I think I prefer them the right way up. And then salt and pepper. So I'll do my salt first. Luckily I've got a battery operated salt and pepper grinder. That was the salt I did first. I'm now doing the pepper. That's for the flavour. Now the thyme leaves, and what I've done is I've done thyme and I've done rosemary just for a variety. Remember, you're supposed to be using your particular herb that it is that you've grown. So I'm going to put the ones with that are the right way up, I'm putting on rosemary. Oh, yum. And the ones that I put upside down, I'm putting on thyme. Same as the coriander. Oh, the coriander, I think I put some thyme in that as well, didn't I? Okay. Now, then the balsamic vinegar, 1 to 2 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar. Get out another tablespoon. It's a big tablespoon. Just measuring it. So just with your finger ever so slightly pop your balsamic vinegar over the tomatoes. My mouth's watering as I'm doing this. I love balsamic vinegar and, well, yum. Okay, and I think then you put it back into the oven. I'll just give my hands a bit of a wash. Back into the oven. Again, make sure you're using your oven glove for another 10 to 15 minutes. I'll pause the video now to put this in, and I'll come back and show you how we serve the finished product. That beeping you hear, students, is my timer going off for my savoury onion and tomato tarts, and they should be nicely done. Now mine took 14 minutes. I did check these before I turned on the camera. So making sure that you switch off your oven when you're finished. And while I was waiting for my tarts to cook, you'll notice that I've tidied up, okay, and I'm ready to go again. Make sure you tidy up. Please don't let your mum and dad do your dishes for you. You have to do your own, because you're going to have to do them when you get back to school. Now, having a look at my tarts, oh yum. I think the one that I'm going to present for you today is maybe this one, okay. Now they'll still be very hot, so be careful. So remember, you are presenting, so you just want to make sure you tidy up your tart. I'm popping a bit of parsley on there for colour. So those are the savoury onion and tomato tarts with balsamic vinegar. Enjoy, guys. I'm sure you're going to. I'm sure your parents are going to enjoy eating your food.